Speedy Gonzales, friend of my sister.
Speedy Gonzales, friend of everybody's sister.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another glorious episode of Nerd with Dre and Jeff. As always, I am the second, some would say worse, half of that lineup. I am your co-host, Jeff May, and with me,
I guess I am the Sylvester the Cat to your Speedy Gonzales, Dre Alvarez here, found most places Nerd Numbers.
you're letting me be Speedy Gonzales.
I'm not Speedy
The
Gonzales,
much
man.
larger, much whiter of the two of us.
You are, there is absolutely no way I would take me in a race versus you, and there is a slow comparable to Speedy Gonzales, but there was no way in hell I was picking that name for who I was in that comparable.
I got a bad knee, Dre. Folks, you saw the title, but we are continuing our season on speed. I love this. I really love, I mean, I guess we could have called it running or what, gotta go fast, with an incredible subject that I was really rallying to do this because I find this character very interesting. And you guys saw the title. We're talking Speedy Gonzales, baby.
Can I be my pedantic self for the millionth time on this
Absolutely.
subject? So many people, myself included, listen to podcasts on an audio device that might have autoplay, could be in the car, you hit skip. The "you've seen the title" is not true. It is an audio medium. It is more than fine to say what you're doing. That is why old things in the past, like radio programs, like when our subject came out, would do like station identification. You're listening to blah, audio medium. They might not have seen the title, Jeff.
Okay, you're listening to Nerd on the Jeff Has Cool Friends podcast network. Today we are joined by Dre Alvarez as we are talking about the history of Speedy Gonzales. I am your host, Jeff May, and thank you again for coming. This is brought to you by listeners like you, and we really appreciate you being here.
I'm not going to hate it.
next
That
week,
is
that's-
soothing, Jeff. That is like, as a parent, shockingly soothing. That is creepy. But yeah, we're talking Speedy Gonzales. Now, shocker, this was Jeff's idea, which had me super excited. Like I pitched some bad ideas to you, and the bad idea is coming next month. I can't wait. I'm leaving that as a surprise.
I will say next month is, I think, and this is a conversation that we have off air all the time. I think for search engine optimization, next month is a terrible idea, but I'm very excited to do it. And I can't wait for you guys to hear that episode because it's going to be incredible. And it's also something I know very little about.
Oh, I'm even more excited. But
yes,
I mean, so we're in as Jeff already mentioned, I'll kind of cheat Jeff and do the intro, but Jeff is going to be driving. Jeff, as mentioned, is the Speedy Gonzales of this episode. We are in season 11 of Nerd. We bandy around a subject. Oftentimes it is me bringing something to Jeff, like a bad ingredient in a reality TV show, and saying, Jeff, you have to make a meal of this. And
You're
Jeff
doing a
looks at
cutthroat
me.
kitchen on me, yeah.
It is. I realize that's 100% what I've done is I'm just like cutthroat kitchen. I'm like, Jeff, you have to do, spoiler for next month. Jeff managed to both use that ingredient and build a thesis around it. Now, we did Sonic Spinball as the first month, which I was super excited about. I'd wanted to do Sonic. I'd wanted to talk pinball. How do you put them both together? We did it. Listen to last month. This month, we're doing Speedy Gonzales. And Jeff, when you pitched this to me, you actually pitched it like much larger than I would have envisioned, but you sold it so well. And this is a subject near and dear to my heart that the research will reveal about being, Hispanic American, troubling representation. So
this is actually, Speedy Gonzales, and the reason I picked this, for those of you that are not aware of my backstory, I am a pop culture historian by definition. And on top of that, too, I used to teach a course on pop culture. And a lot of stuff that I would cover, I would teach teenagers about really touchy subjects, but things like that are incredibly nuanced, too. And I think Speedy Gonzales might be the most nuanced story of a theoretically problematic character, and a character that exists. I would say he's, if we're really going through it, as far as the main roster goes, probably the second most problematic Looney Tune in 2025 behind Pepe Le Pew.
Pepe Le Pew, yeah.
Yeah, people, yeah.
Although, here's an interesting, annoying thing on that point. Of course, he's a problematic character, and it is the Wolf of Wall Street program. It is always hard to have a character that is portrayed in a way, even if you intend for them to be problematic, for them not to come off cool if they are the, protagonist of the story. But I mean, Pepe Le Pew in story is known as a prop. Now, of course, he like gets let off the hook. Occasionally the lady will like him or whatever, but it's like Pepe Le Pew is here as a villain, but isn't it hilarious? And that trope, I mean, Dan Fielding on Night Court, Barney on How I Met Your Mother, that like, they're a sexual harasser, but they're lovable.
The sex pest.
The sex pest has been around forever, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think like we can talk all about sort of like the creation of Pepe Le Pew as a racial stereotype of Frenchmen. Like it can be all there, the hypersexualized European Frenchman thing. It was like all trope. And that's kind of one of the things about Looney Tunes that people tend to forget because they may have grown up with them. They may have seen them as kids and things like that. But the reality is that Looney Tunes were not created specifically for children. Like these were theatrical releases that were for everybody. And so a lot of the, you can also talk, about like how Bugs Bunny is modeled after Clark Gable, right? And stuff like that. Like there's all these like historical, like Foghorn Leghorn was this vaudeville actor. There's so many different things to get into. And the history of Speedy Gonzales is very interesting. He is a character that I consider sort of on the B list of your Looney Tunes characters. He's not on the A list, but he shows up. Right, he's not on the C list. There are like forgotten Looney Tunes characters, obviously a lot of one-offs, and you think of, like during the Beatnik phase, Cool Cat is a great example of sort of Looney Tunes that just fell by the wayside.
Well, you did all the research. One of the things we're pulling heavily from is Dan Lee Down Under. I think he's Australian, I'm guessing based on that name. Great on YouTube, did a nice recap of it, and kind of noted it's funny when you go back in time to that era, as you're saying, Warner Brothers and then the production studio they purchased that did originally make Looney Tunes, they were just like throw stuff at the wall and sticks. It's so hilarious to think back to like the Disney era. There was a time in history where you had multiple studios just going, make as many characters as you can. Thing you always bring up in terms of animation, et cetera, about, merchandising, toyetic, things like that. So it's just make as many characters as we can that we can use for other things. And certain ones have over time been winnowed and stuck around.
And that's sort of the brilliance of what Warner was doing at the time, because Warner is releasing 5-minute animation shorts, and they are essentially at this time pilots. They are pilots for the character themselves. If people react positively, make more. If people don't really care, make less. Or just abandon the character. A ton of characters have been abandoned, including the original version of Speedy Gonzales.
Oh my gosh.
Something that's going to be very interesting as we get into. So to give you a quick little, I guess, like the wiki summary of Speedy Gonzales before we get into if somehow you do not know who this character is. Speedy Gonzales is an animated cartoon character in the Warner Brothers Looney Tunes Merry Melodies series of cartoons. He is portrayed as, quote, the fastest mouse in all of Mexico, or Mexico, if you watch that, with his major traits being the ability to run extremely fast, being quick-witted and heroic, and speaking with a Mexican accent. And that is going to be a big point here. He usually wears a yellow sombrero with a white shirt, trousers, and like a red sort of kerchief here. And this is sort of a very stereotypical outfit of rural Mexican villages, Mexican, and we can talk about California being a piece of Mexico all you want, but, California and Mexico, very normal. And there have been, to this point, 46 shorts.
If you're off by one, let Jeff know in the comments. If it's 44, if it's 47, let him know. Don't let him
important. Well, what's important to note, though, is when you look at like where the zeitgeist is now, the Tasmanian Devil, Taz, 5. He showed up in 5 cartoons. He had a renaissance into the 90s. He was an extreme character, but he had always been like a very popular foil.
Did the Tasmanian Devil show, did that come before or
Tasmania?
After? You mean? Yeah, like down in Tasmania, that one, right? That's how I remember him, because he had the animated kids show. Did he get that after Sonic?
After Sonic had come out, I believe Tasmania, which by the way has one of the all-time greatest themes.
I love that intro.
Welcome to Venezuela. The sky's always the other way in a rain or shine.
It's 91. Oh, I absolutely do. And I'm trying not to sing it, but I'm reading that it came out in 91. So I would be hard pressed to believe it was a direct response to Sonic, but it's interesting that apparently in 1991, this idea of the super fast, extreme character to appeal to kids, like we had Sonic, we had the Tasmanian Devil, who's like, they're super fast and destructive. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Tasmanian Devil became like, because the Tasmanian Devil had become sort of this, I don't want to say counterculture, but the sort of like, he's the Looney Tune you'd get tattooed on, like he's the like the badass. He became emblematic in sort of the way that Yosemite Sam became emblematic of mud flaps in the 80s and 90s. You'd have like the back off partner on the mud flaps of a tractor trailer. Taz really became this like very, very sort of like extreme sort of like anti-hero character. And then they were like, well, it would be stupid for us not to make Tasmania and the video games. And, he's on like, how much merch did Taz find himself on, right? But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So first thing that we're going to talk about is 1953. We have Cattails for 2. That is the name of Speedy Gonzales's pilot. And I refer to this as a pilot because if you know anything about television pilots, you know that oftentimes what you see in that very first offering is very different than what the final product is going to be. And the simplest thing I can say is that the first version of Speedy was racist as fuck.
It was too racist for the 50s.
Yep.
The studio when they were done was like, okay, dial it back. And I'm stealing from all of Jeff's research. We have Operation Wetback. We have this we have the shocker in 2025 US with Trump and all of this. The United States has always had a contentious relationship with immigrants, with agrarian workers.
Not poignant right now at all.
Yeah, doesn't apply. And so they had this thing of like, need people to do work, but want to send them back. So in like the 50s, in the midst of the Red Scare and all this other stuff, trying to deport lots of people, try and increase lots of border stuff. In that era, they were like, hey, hold up, a little too racist.
Yeah. And that's going to be really legend of animation. Fritz Frayling is going to really kind of start pushing the redesign with Holly Pratt. But I think it's also important to know that Warner at this time, and they acknowledge, like, Warner's really good. They were the first group to really acknowledge the problematic history while not trying to censor or change it, which I think is actually very good. So like you would get the Looney Tunes DVD sets that you would get in the 2000s, like the early 2000s, would have, hey, these were made at a different time. They were not made to do harm, but we fully recognize the harm that some of these shorts and characters may have created. We are not going to erase our history. We're going to leave this in here, but we need you to know that it wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now. Here you go. And I think that's the right way to do it. But Speedy Gonzales originally was Porky Pig in it. He just had a red t-shirt, like a big red t-shirt, no pants. And he had this, the stereotypical Mexican bowl cut of the time, that really short, kind of doofy bowl cut. He had the 2 front big buck teeth because he's a mouse and it makes sense. One of them was gold. So you get it. And that episode has some great ideas in the character, but also the design is absolute trash.
So there's also, in terms of that episode, there's something a little hilarious to me all across the board. So one of the legends is Frank Gonzalez was an animator and had worked on a technique to be really fast for animation.
Yeah, we're going to get into that one in a more depth.
But I guess what's hilarious to me is allegedly he got the nickname Speedy. They're like Speedy Gonzales. And someone's like, you know what? That's a great name for a character. So imagine you're top of your field. You're in one of the best animation studios out there. You're so good at your job, you get the nickname Speedy, which is a compliment in the context of animation. And they're like, to honor you, we made a character in your namesake off your nickname. You're like, awesome. What did we get? And you go look up the very first Speedy Gonzales image. You're like, what do you think? And man, Frank, Ouch. Ouch.
Yeah, it's not great. That is also important to note too, that a lot, like a significant portion, and I think more than any other studio, Warner's had a lot of Mexican American and Mexican animators. Like, I think their animation department was like 40% Mexican. So in 1955, 2 years later, we're going to get an eponymous short called Speedy Gonzales that is going to feature the redesign that Friz Freleng and Holly Pratt absolutely created and has not changed.
It's a good design. I have no complaints with it.
Great design. It certainly highlights certain stereotypes, but they're not necessarily stereotypes that, and this is a very difficult thing for me to say because I'm the whitest man who ever lived. But in all of my research, it seems that the Mexican and Mexican American communities do not push back against that visual stereotype.
And I want to like step in and be really careful here. First, I want to say like something funny. So I am Hispanic American. What's hilarious is I'm like half the whitest side ever. So my mom's side is from North Dakota. My dad's side is from Texas. So I'm a second generation American. So whatever that's going to do, depending on what Trump decides in the future. And hilariously, actually, my grandma was born in Illinois because back in the day, it used to be much easier to just go back and forth across the border before the United States got scared about it. So I'm Hispanic American and would definitely say, to be mean to myself, fall in that Carlton range of right. Didn't get a lot of the culture. And I will stress this, that was intentional on my dad's part because my dad grew up in rural agrarian Texas and was like, people are racist as fuck. And I don't want my kids speaking Spanish. I don't want my kids having an accent because I don't want them to deal with the same discrimination he did as a child. I tell people that and they're like, oh man, it's a bummer. And I'm like, he was right. I look around, I'm like, he was right. Every day I go out there, I'm like, oh my God, my dad knew what was up and I hate it.
I think for sure that, like, I mean, you would probably, it's like, what a beautifully misplaced thing to do, right? Like, because obviously you're like, I sure would have liked to have.
I'm on his side, and I mean, I'll throw this out. My brother,
he's
Daniel,
right. Totally right. Yeah.
My brother and I were slightly different. So my brother, when he got older, basically did learn Spanish, do more of that. I am certainly versed in, cultural aspects, particularly the food. I'm good at the food when it comes to Hispanic culture. Help me out in terms of my weight. One of my favorite stories I've told is out here in Appleton, Wisconsin, there is a tiny Hispanic population.
Classic Mexican hub.
Yeah, there is. I mean, when I say that, like I'm talking like stores and stuff, you're absolutely right in terms of like migrant workers, which are required because farm work requires people that are able to move around because it is not year round. And I don't know, I hate people. Anyway, we will talk more for sure on that. But there is a small community of like places to buy Mexican food, et cetera, in the bakery. And like when I walk in, they'll be like, "Habla español?" And I'm like, "No." And the last time I went, I said it, and she looked at me, and I just went, "I know, right?" So when you were talking about my dad, talking my dad being misplaced, what I'll stress is agreed with him, and the door was always open. So it wasn't like it wasn't like a Billy Elliot, no learning Spanish in this house. He was like, I am not going to actively do it. And as we got older, my brother and myself were certainly capable of doing that. I have, had experience of culture. I just do not speak the language. But to that point on Speedy Gonzales being perceived as racist, when I wade into that territory, I always get trepidatious on, Native Americans don't have a problem with Chief Wahoo or these other things. Where I will throw basically what they'll say.
Some don't have a problem with
that's the key point, Jeff. A white person will find a friend. I have Hispanic friends, or I have Native American friends. They don't have a problem with it. It's fine. I saw George Karl, the former coach of the Denver Nuggets, do this. He was just like, "Oh man, I found out that certain Chiefs don't have a problem with the Washington Redskins," and then that changed my mind. I was just like, "Stop it!" But when you're talking,
culture is not monolithic.
But then that's where Speedy Gonzales gets funny. Is because you're like, most people don't have a problem. It's like, it's like. When you're this feels racist and you go, but most of them don't have a problem with it, them. And you're like, okay, you just said them to not be racist. Yeah. Great. Speedy Gonzales is the one you're like, yeah, no problem with it.
To keep in mind too, most of the controversy racially is unrelated to the character of Speedy Gonzales. It actually tends to drift more towards both setting and community, as we'll find out when we get into it. Because I don't know if you saw the notes, Dre, but I have like 2 pages of like, let's get into some racism here. Now, in 1955, we get Speedy Gonzales, right? That is sort of like the true first appearance of Speedy Gonzales. We're not going to count 1953. That's a pilot cameo. If you're in the comics community, that would be a cameo first appearance, right? It's not the real version.
Do you want a hyper nerdy comparable to throw back to the Nerd Back catalog? Caliban of the Morlocks showed up way earlier, just like as this random person in a comic.
The New Mutants. He was like a little, and then
he showed up in an X-Men thing, but like they were at a party and he just happened to be this random mutant that was there. And like he saw Kitty Pryde and fell in love, but then ran off, and then they like redesigned him later. It's very much like that. And Caliban, one of the Morlocks,
got turned into a Horseman of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, so very similar. So Caliban of X-Men and the Morlocks, Speedy Gonzales, same, Jeff, same.
They're the same exact character. I'm glad you brought that up. So now here's a fun fact about Speedy Gonzales. The short from 1955 is it won the Oscar for Best Animated Short. So this is already coming out the gates fast, if we want to say the phrase. Pardon that, but yeah, he kind of came out the gates winning the Derby, you know. Now, there's an obvious foil for him in Sylvester, right? Sylvester and Tweety, Sylvester and Speedy. It's just flying versus, running, right? Eventually, in the 1960s, they're going to introduce Daffy Duck as another nemesis. And I think that's very interesting. I think when you look at it, because the one cool thing about Speedy Gonzales that Looney Tunes didn't normally have, and I think this is kind of why he's such a heroic character and emblematic of like the good stuff in Mexican culture, is he's a hero, and Looney Tunes don't have those. Like, if you really look at all the different, like, Bugs Bunny's a nihilist. Bugs Bunny's not
Bugs Bunny is the Joker, like 100%. Yeah.
So Bugs Bunny, he's not a hero. He might be a reluctant hero, but really he's Loki. He's a god of mischief, essentially, right? Porky Pig kind of tends to be more of like a bystander. Roadrunner's just doing their own thing while Wile E. Coyote's trying to kill him. Tweety Bird's more of an innocent child that kind of gets over. Like, there aren't any real heroes in the Looney Tunes canon except for Speedy Gonzales.
What I would throw out to Roadrunner, by the way, is I would say he's like a force of nature, right? It's like, you're fighting a tornado, you're fighting something, right? He doesn't seem to necessarily have emotions. It's just a meet, run away. And infamously,
Roadrunner is the rock that Sisyphus is trying to push up the hill, right? Like,
and infamously, there were like a set of rules for Roadrunner that kept it very much that way with, and Sisyphean, you're right. Like, we're watching a Sisyphean tale where, the boulder just inexplicably throws you off a cliff and laughs at you.
Yeah, well, it's funny too, because like, I love Looney Tunes history. I have a Looney Tunes themed tattoo on the inside of my right bicep. It is a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote themed tattoo. It's a barrel of Acme TNT or gunpowder that's lit. The creation of Wile E. Coyote is actually based specifically on the description of the American Southwest Coyote by Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. So they literally designed him to be based off of how Samuel Clemens described the American Coyote, right? So Speedy Gonzales is essentially Looney Tunes superhero, right? He's like a Flash.
At some point they actually even put him in a Zorro cape, but it's a lot like the Guy Williams Zorro television show, Jeff, which was from 1957. And they actually do at some point put Speedy Gonzales in that. And so Zorro is, another Mexican hero, Don Diego. And so it's interesting that, Warner Brothers and Disney both had.
To be fair, all things considered, he takes place in Mexico. He's a hero to the Mexican people, but Zorro himself,
he's from Spanish
character created by a white man. So that is also, I don't mean to be pedantic about
No,
that.
you're
but-
right. And for what it's worth,
Yeah.
one of the best movies, The Mask of Zorro, does it right, where they're like, it was a white guy. Hey, he gets replaced by Antonio Banderas, Mexican adjacent.
The
Anyway.
white guy is a white guy in tan face for sure.
But no, Anthony Hopkins, I mean, he's from Spain. They do it correct, though. Do they? Oh my God, do they tan face Anthony Hopkins up in that movie? I hope not. I
Anthony
think he looks
Hopkins
pretty
has
white.
played Othello.
That's
He does
true.
not have a problem.
You can take Othello from me with Anthony Hopkins. I'm just asking you not to take Mask of Zorro, which I was a huge fan of. But anyway,
I don't think many people had a problem with that, but again, I cannot speak to.
I'm gonna look in and I'll get back to you, Jeff.
yeah.
But
Okay,
when you're talking the culture stuff, both Disney and Warner Brothers have this takes place in Mexican area accents, etc., stuff like that.
Yeah. So Speedy basically is a hero to the community, because, and you can break down all the like representing and he is in a way, like you said, a Zorro, right? You have poor residents of a certain community that are probably getting terrorized by like Western style bullies. And then wouldn't you know it, but this super heroic, bold character, like it shows up to help everybody out. And so that's why Speedy Gonzales tends to register as an iconic character in the Mexican and Mexican American communities, because he is like a superhero, like legit. And upon looking at the rest of the Looney Tunes canon, he is one of the rare heroes in all of that. Not just an interesting character, but an interesting character that also has heroic motivations. And again, very limited at that time, right? Most of it is like Bugs Bunny finds himself in a situation where he has to terrorize a villain. Doesn't make him a hero. It just makes him circumstantially dealing with it, So anyway, he's the hero. And also there's this kind of inference that he is a Lothario a little bit. Like he's just this handsome, powerful, heroic Mexican mouse. So like there, there are lines that are peppered throughout there. Like one of my favorite ones is like a guy goes, Speedy Gonzales is a friend of my sister. And then somebody goes, Speedy Gonzales is a friend of everybody's sister. Like this idea that everybody loves this guy. Everybody loves this guy. Like he's the mouse man. He's the man. No, he's not the man.
He's the mouse.
He's the mouse. And again, those implications. So early Looney Tunes, people sort of forget that they are made with adult viewership in mind as well. So you definitely have a more Shrek-y kind of sense of humor in a lot of these things, where they're peppering in little references that adults will understand. It's just like adults are going to understand. Like a kid might read that as, oh, all the girls have a crush on Speedy Gonzales. And the adults would say, Speedy Gonzales has fucked all those girls. And either way, it's funny.
Can we also throw out just the hilarity that throughout the history of animation, you have these very talented adults making things that are usually end up being targeted at kids. Animators are like horny as hell. So of course, one of the more infamous, right, the Rescuers, they're like naked photos in the back, like naked drawings, something you bring up all of the time, either on Jeff Has Cool Friends that you can find over at patreon.com/Jeff May, or Tom and Jeff Watch Batman over at patreon.com/Gamefully Unemployed, is like how horny Bruce Timm is, who does like the Batman, the animated series. So it's like, it is funny where that's a very common thing.
Professionally horny.
Yes. I mean, the Rocket episode, just that one, you're just like,
yeah.
Yes.
I think probably one of my favorite references was Joey Bragg say when he was on, I believe, an episode of Tom and Jeff Watch Batman was the one. And he said, Bruce Timm wants to spend the rest of his life painting naked ladies on jets. And instead he ended up creating the most iconic Batman design of all time.
That's true. And that seems true of a lot of artists. So, when you're talking these adult themes being sprinkled into kid stuff, it's like, I imagine that as things got more mainstream, more standard in practice, some of that started getting winnowed, but that's been there forever. And then, as you mentioned, like a big resurgence of that was Shrek, that idea of, well, that's a kid's movie, but we can be edgy. We can put stuff in there for adults. go back to the 50s and 60s. They've been doing that forever.
Yeah. And like, of course they have. I think people think that like stuff that happened in the past was somehow not as intellectually created, right? That like now is when movies are great. And it's like, I don't know, man. Think about if Arsenic and Old Lace came out right now. That would be insane, right? But anyway, so reminder, these things were released in theaters. They would oftentimes abut movies as well. You would oftentimes, and they did that, like a lot of movies, they tried bringing that back in the 80s and into the 90s, where you would have a movie that would have a cartoon opening the movie.
But
Like
what I remember is there was a Roger Rabbit clip that played in front of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in theaters. I do remember that from a kid.
Was it Honey? It was Shrunk, right? It wasn't Blew Up, right?
Blew Up is the second one.
Yeah.
Although he can blow him up in the first one too. It doesn't make sense, Jeff. That's another nerd
and it was
episode.
like a Baby Herman one, right? Like it was like,
I think so, yeah.
yeah. And so it's like kind of stuff like that. Like there's a long cinematic history of placing cartoons, you know, sort of before a film, or like doing a Merry Melodies, where you show up, you'd pay your money and you'd watch, you know, 45 minutes of these things. Like, I think most people now consumed them from television.
Yeah, for sure. Like the syndication, seeing them as kids.
Yeah. And don't realize that wasn't really an option as much. And it wasn't how they did things back then. You'd go to the theater for it. Dre, I don't know if you know this, but not only is this show available under the Jeff Has Cool Friends umbrella and early on patreon.com/JeffMay. But if you go to patreon.com/JeffMay for a very small amount of money, you can produce this show along with other shows, and you can get stuff in the mail. Like, there's lots of really fun tiers. And we actually have producers. We have producers, Dre. And we're going to read some names off here. And I'm going to start with a very special one, right?
What do we got?
So a big shout out to, as a treat for nerd numbers, MikeSlater.com is featuring 150% more Babylon 5 content. Dre, go there now to learn all about the Babylon 5 Season 1 Suck-a-Punch.
Jeff, I say this unironically. Go find Mike Slater on Blue Sky, all of the listeners. That's Slatron, Slatron, and tell him he gerrymandered Suck-a-Punches. I'm saying that sentence in earnest. Continue. On to the next producer.
A huge shout out to Bobby Opulent. A big shout out to at Ravages of the Scourge. That's RAVAGESOFTHESCOURGE for your fantasy themed death metal, deathcore needs. A big shout out to Put a Watch on a Belt for a Waste of Time.
I love it.
And a big shout Bimmy and Jimmy Out Fighting Crime. Oh man, those all rhymed.
We got that. That's from Double Dragon 3, but we could also, definitely go what Speedy Gonzales and Tweety Bird out fighting crime, right? They're both enemies of Sylvester.
I'm going to start calling you to Old Grogu just to see what happens. And then the final one I'm going to say is I'm going to shout out Porcelain Jesus, who just shifted their net. So they're not technically a producer of this show, but they upgraded to the You Get the Jeff May rookie card tier.
Wait, Jeff, what's that?
So when I do breaks on the Jeff Has Cool Cards YouTube page, I do anywhere from 6 to 8 a month, depending on, which things. I take all those cards, pull them together, and then I redistribute them among people to their preferences. So whatever people like, I try to send them in.
Now, Jeff, I'm going to give you a tough sell. There's no way you have, let's say, X-Files, vintage X-Files cards, possibly even signed by David Bell in your arsenal, do you?
You know what's funny, Dre, is I forgot to say that you sent those cards on the channel when I was doing the video. I was supposed to say, did I say that? Because I don't think
so. Jeff is mentioning over at Jeff Has Cool Cards where Jeff will break cards. And a thing you can also do, you can sponsor breaks. Right now, we don't have an official process. You can just send Jeff stuff and he'll open it. Also, something Jeff likes doing on the same channel, again, Jeff Has Cool Cards, you will show the mailbag because people send you cool stuff. So for the record, Jeff, regardless of if you gave me explicit credit on the episode, that would be July 9th. So if you go to Jeff Has Cool Cards, you can watch the July 9th episode and see Dave Bell and Jeff break X-Files cards. You did open it on a mailbag, which Jeff also shows, and a tribute me there as well. So
wait,
you showed the box. You showed the box of X-Files cards and said, this is from Dre. I'll be opening it in the future. So
yes.
Again,
but we do have guests on that do that, and I take all the cards and I want them out of my house. So I mail them out and I try to make these very personalized mail packages. Everyone gets personal correspondence from me. It's very affordable.
And apparently we can now say you do officially throw some of these right into the toilet. Thanks to Porcelain Jesus.
Thanks to Porcelain Jesus. That toilet is getting some cards. Dre, who else we got?
We got Ricky Cilantro. I'm definitely just going to say you rock. I had something else to say, completely forgot it, so that's what you get. We got Dan Hackroyd. He rocks. You get the enchanted, wandering, unpierced, left nipple cider served at room temperature. Jeff, judge's ruling. That land, I stick it?
Shout out.
I stuck the landing, finally. I'm going to mess up the next one, though. So Ida Amin's one-man band. Yep.
Idi Amin. It's Idi Amin.
Idi Amin, one-man accordion band's greatest hits, captive audiences, the B-sides. Now, Jeff, I do have a fun interjection here.
Is it about how you don't know who Idi Amin is?
It doesn't matter. I do know Steve
last king
Jordan.
of Scotland.
I do know Steve Jordan, who was a one-eyed accordion player, and I am actually named after one of his songs. So I had an accordion theme ready to go along with that. You're right, though. I did not know. You said Scotland?
Idi Amin was called. You ever hear about the movie The Last King of Scotland starring Forrest Whitaker?
I did. I've heard of the movie.
Inhuman monster, Ugandan ruler, Idi Amin. You ever heard about him?
I've heard of that movie. That's the name?
He was like an African Hitler.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, extra history lesson and accordion lesson you get from that. We get Norm from Cheers, who is a three-phrase producer, the king of all producers, but a good king, not a bad king like the King of Scotland. And then we get Burrito, who, may be your best friend, but is also just cool dude. Kung Fu Burrito is what I say. And finally, we have Jeff has a 12-inch tick. All right.
Action figure.
Oh, wait. What are we saying? We saying action figure? We not. You can go either way. Anyway.
It's there. And thank you all to those producers. And you guys are really, really great. Thank you. It means a lot that we can get this thing moving and keep it going. And if you guys want to hit patreon.com/Jeff May, of course, we love anybody who listens for free or not. But obviously, we can truly create more and better content as we get more people in. Now, we've already dabbled, but let's get into the weird racism stuff. Dre, a lot of this is stuff that I studied through college. I taught about stuff like this. I granted the history class I taught was world history. It was world 2. So it was like everything from the fall of Rome to the Renaissance. But my specialty was sort of pop culture history and specifically modern American history.
It's funny with you being from Massachusetts. I thought you were going to be like, my specialty was racism.
I mean, that's a lot of people's specialty in Massachusetts. Now, you brought this up before, but 1954, the year after Speedy Gonzales came out, we have what's called Operation Wetback, which was a mass deportations of Mexicans in the United States. A very dark moment in American history, a place that has a lot of dark moments throughout its history. Very, very poignant nowadays as well. And so we understand that the veil of, quote, it's just humor, right? Or it's just a joke, or it's a cartoon, it can't hurt anybody. I understand that can exist, but we cannot pretend that there's no racism involved in the stereotyping of the original Speedy Gonzales design.
Yeah,
it's racist.
Well, as mentioned, it wasn't that they saw the first design and they said that's too racist. Their complaint wasn't, hey, that's racist. It was too racist.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we see it following up, it's like they absolutely love the stereotypical voice, a lot of the stereotypical caricatures. There is a song that you referenced at some point here that I did listen to, and I'm just like, man, called Speedy Gonzales. I was like, this is
the one by Pat Boone.
Yeah, there's a Pat Boone song, like a greatest hit of some sort, right? It hit some Billboard chart.
It cracked the top 10. Yeah, we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I think that this is fair, I don't think that all stereotypes are necessarily wholly harmful, meaning that some of them aren't doing widespread damage. And like the people of Boston have the stereotype of them being basically straight up assholes, right? I don't think anybody from Boston really minds that, even though they're not all like that.
An answer is hey, they're making fun of everybody. It's like the South Park theme. And if you do look at Looney Tunes, right, you've got Yosemite Sam and the Kentucky Fried Colonel, that are just doing American stereotypes. You bring up Pepe Le Pew. So the argument you can make is, they make fun of everybody. And the really, really tough area you wind up in is, yes, Looney Tunes is making fun of all nationalities, quote unquote, equally. But all of those other nationalities have other depictions on screen at the time that are positive. Whereas if the only representation we're getting of Hispanics, of Mexicans, of Hispanic Americans at that time are these caricatures, it's rough. And so it's a really tough position as a creator and even as a fan to be in, to just be like, this is racist. You're like, well, what's the big deal? We're racist against everybody. You're like, yeah, but that's the only representation of this group. There's a plethora of representations of that other group.
And I would say the two biggest recipients of that kind of damage are, especially at that time through animation, are Black and Asian. They are the two that get way the worst, especially, the World War II era Asian depiction. I wrote an entire research paper on anti-Japanese sentiment in World War II and watched all the cartoons, your Tokyo Jokios, your Bugs Nips the Nips, and all those really horrible. And then, but you also get, they call it like the censored 11, right? There's like Coal Black into Seven Dwarves, and so Black people and Asian people definitely took it hard. The visual shift of Speedy Gonzales, and this is actually where I'm going about the stereotype. The visual shift of Speedy Gonzales to the traditional way that you're picturing him right now, with the wide sombrero and the red neckerchief and everything like that, among Mexican American communities was not widely viewed as being a harmful or offensive stereotype. They were like, it's fine. It's like, and again, I equate it to Boston, where it's like, look, a guy in Boston has a Red Sox hat and a gray hoodie on. It's like, we do that. That's just a normal thing. And I don't think people now, if you're I think all Bostonians are racist, that is a stereotype that will get pushback on. Whereas if you're Bostonians are assholes, you're not going to get any pushback on that. So there's definitely a fine line that's being drawn here. And again, I am trying to view this from the perspective of a cultural historian, as opposed to a white guy just talking out his ass. It's a very fine line. And please check me if I sort of fall on one side on there.
I do think the cultural history is important. And I mean, even if we talk now, so an example, we look in the United States now with all of the horrible stuff going on, and you raise your hand and you're just like, look, in 2001, so many people in this country were on board with the war on Iraq and the war on terror. And it is so infuriating for people to just pretend that they're not. And a lot of times when you're saying the cultural historian, it's like, it gets very frustrating when you view something and people are like, nah. And you're like, look, we have to acknowledge that's what things were like at that time. If we don't, we're doing ourselves a disservice, and we're propping up a past that doesn't exist.
Now, let me build off of what you said there. In 2001, there was a lot of racist anti-Arab sentiment in America, right? Among the humanity, if you want to call it that, of the era. Really horrible racism from terrible people, bad people. And those people are still active today. You can see they're on the news now. What you weren't getting was the Powerpuff Girls beating up a Muslim. That wasn't happening. And the reason I make that reference is because Saturday Night Live did, I believe it was a TV Funhouse sketch, so a Robert Smigel animation of what if 9/11 happened in the golden age of animation? And so there it is. It's the Powerpuff Girls beating up just random Muslims, because that's how fucking racist a lot of stuff was towards like the enemies of the state at the time, right? You couldn't have that. There's a documentary, Superheroes Unmasked. It was from the History Channel, I believe 2003, maybe 2004, with Stan Lee. And he's talking about like the shift after 9/11. And he's like, well, it's obviously the culture has shifted to be aware of the damage that racism can cause. And I believe he said, you wouldn't have Captain America come punching a Muslim. That just wouldn't be right. Like, it's not correct. So like art tends to reflect the era of its time and to sort of consume and then regurgitate that through the lens of their art. So that being said, a lot of people claim, and these are a lot of the people that tend to have more of a problem, that his name is the result of a sex joke, much like the Cleveland Steamer or something, like, you know, like there are always those like, oh, somebody's going to give themselves a Speedy Gonzales, you know, if you know what I mean, like Dirty Sanchez or whatever, right? And it's been sort of refuted. And so Warner Brothers animator Martha Goldman Segal said,
good.
Actually, there was this animator, Frank Gonzalez, who was very efficient. And he basically created this new way of efficiency in animation and shared it with all of us. So he got the nickname Speedy Gonzales. I half believe both of these things. I'm not there. I also know if you can find a way to cover up a racism, you would do it, right? If you can find a way to be like, no, that's what this was. It seems like that's been corroborated among the animators, and the animators are, many of them were Mexican. If they had a problem, maybe they would have spoken up, although also speaking up is how you get fired. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's why I half believe both parts of these. Like I believe maybe both of these stories might be slightly apocryphal, but I don't know. Anyway, here's probably the most contentious part of Speedy Gonzales.
It's so bad.
And that is the character of Slowpoke Rodriguez. Slowpoke Rodriguez is the reciprocal mouse of Speedy, right? He is an he's a nothing. Like, he's not a hero. He's the slowest mouse in all of Mexico. And he shows up and he's like, I'm hungry. When do we eat? Like, he's really the bad parts of Mexican stereotypes. He's representing the laziness, Schrodinger's immigrant, right? The lazy immigrant that happens to have 5 jobs.
Yeah,
right?
I have always loved that dichotomy of saying, they're lazy, but they're taking our jobs. And I mean, again, this is widely personal to me, but a really bizarre thing in my family history. So I am a software engineer, as you know, Jeff. I bring it up from time to time, that took like honors classes in high school. Also brought that up from time to time. I would be considered a letdown to my parents, and that they both did much better in school than I did. And of course, I had the answer after the fact, like, ADHD is a hell of a drug.
I doubt you'd be a letdown.
Well, anyway, I was a bit to deal with in high school. I'll put it that way. And in terms of like going to colleges, you and I have funny stories where you and I have very similar things where it's like, oh my God, if you had just put in a little more work, where you could have gone. I went to a state school. I'm happy with it. By the way,
you're
Jeff,
doing great, dude.
Long term for both of us, that's the ideal thing. The small state school, big fish in a small pond, where you don't get $200,000 in debt, is the way to go. But my grandma was, she's, just stay at home, had, I think, 9 kids. The hit rate on her kids at success, like my dad went to an Ivy League grad school. Several of my apparently one of my uncles, the uncle who got me into comics, Angel, was like a state championship math like cadet. And apparently at one point he got second instead of first because he wanted to like go hang out with friends. So he left early. And then I have like other relatives, one of my other uncles is a valedictorian. It's like the hit rate on a second generation family where their parents didn't even speak English in this country, just phenomenal. I watch it after the fact. I'm like, yeah, imagine they grew up in squalor. I'm like, imagine if you didn't grow up in squalor and actually got support, like what that family could have done. So I do get very depressed and offended at the, oh, they're just lazy coming here to steal jobs. Or it's just like, yeah, anybody who like knows the families that go through the effort to immigrate, the amount of work it takes to immigrate to another country, and then at the same time still be successful in school and stuff like my family, that I see that and it's just like, yeah, you fuckers
Racism.
Is what I think a lot. I think that a lot, obviously.
Straight up pathetic racism. And if you think that way, stop listening to the show and also go fuck yourself. Anyway, now this is like, and it's one of the things they mentioned Slowpoke Rodriguez sort of as like a bit where they're like, why don't we go after Slowpoke Rodriguez? He's the slowest mouse of all of Mexico. And it's like, he makes up for it by carrying what? A gun. And he shoots a cat in the face. A Looney Tunes shot in the face. So it's, blasting smoke in their face or whatever. But it's funny because that idea may be done as a bit accidentally played into the stereotypes of violent Mexican immigrants. Again, you'd have to stretch pretty hard to think that the entirety of Warner Brothers wanted to do an anti-Mexican, Mexicans are lazy and dangerous cartoon. That is, I know racism exists. It's not gonna be like that.
Especially when we look at the origin was the opposite. They said, hey, let's pull ourselves back into the, again, it is wild to think about kids' cartoons. You think about how frequently we talked about Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, where it's just like, oh yeah, and the bit is he's going to blow him up, or the bit is he's going to throw him off a cliff, and the bit is this. So, that was very of the time, the violence, Warner Brothers especially, the punchline being, and this character gets horribly injured, but then they're fine, was the norm.
Yeah. And that's standard stuff. And it's like, yeah, he might be the slowest mouse in all of Mexico. He's carrying a gun to make up. That's his defense mechanism, right? Because he's not fast. But also, you'd be a moron to not understand why this is problematic. Like, intent or not, this is problematic. And it really sort of highlights what the controversy of the Speedy Gonzales character is, which is not even that the character himself is problematic. Maybe it's slightly stereotypical, but I don't speak for a whole culture, but many Mexicans, most, if I'm being 100% honest, viewed him as the opposite of problematic.
Well, I'll throw this to you to jump to the end. You showed a bit of merch with Speedy Gonzales' face on it that's probably a little stereotypical. And I was like, that's fine. I watched some of these episodes with Slowpoke Rodriguez and other characters. The context Speedy Gonzales is in is where you're like, oh, that's racist. You're like, Speedy Gonzales is like, not a problem. And then they're like, oh, look, here comes Speedy Gonzales. They talk with the accent and do stuff. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ, stop.
So they are, and this is actually something very interesting that I had saved. I put in the trivia section, but I kind of feel like I should bring it up now. And that is that these side characters are emblematic of a group. It's good. We're going to start talking Steinbeck now.
Let's do it, man.
John Steinbeck in this era is one of the three most famous American authors. Just easily.
Other two being Stephen King and R.L. Stine, of course.
Yeah, because I was actually trying to find a version of like who would be the modern equivalent of a John Steinbeck. Would it be like a Michael Chabon or Chuck Palahniuk maybe? But even then, like, I don't know if they get the gas that he had. Like, I don't think people understand how much gas Steinbeck had at the time. In 1935, he wrote his first major popular book was Tortilla Flat. And if you haven't read it, it's about a group of paisanos who are basically just like Mexican bros that are doing what they're like. They're good timing, well-natured bros. Right. And one of the things that Steinbeck did was he really loved to talk about sort of multicultural issues and how the goodness in them, like Tortilla Flat is a vibe, basically. Like, it's just like this successful book, 1935, but it did sort of create in white America's view the idea of like the paisano. Right, like the the guys that are just chilling, having a good time, partying, getting drunk at night, like living paycheck to paycheck and living the best life doing it, right? You can see that reflected. And then a lot of the characters from Tortilla Flat returned 10 years later in a book called Cannery Row. These both take place in the Monterey area, so in the Salinas Valley, sort of central California, right? The central coast of California. Beautiful place, by the way. I love Monterey. It's one of my favorite places to go. But these are ingrained. It would be like putting a clown in something, like a scary clown in something, and pretending you've never heard of It by Stephen King, right? Like, and so much so that there are 2 episodes named after Steinbeck. And it's specifically Tortilla Flaps and Cannery Row. They don't hide the influence in there.
And I was reading that a lot of the early Looney Tunes stuff was inspired by Steinbeck. And I think like there is of Mice and Men, there 2 of the characters that kind of disappear.
Oh,
they do that.
They do a Lenny everywhere. Like, yeah. Lenny's an archetype now. Like Lenny might be the most famous character that Steinbeck ever created. Sorry, Tom Joad. But Lenny has become sort of this shorthand for a man with limited intelligence that is an absolute tank, right? Like that's that. And, there was always that like abominable snowman character in Looney Tunes, or like there was always like the big guy, small guy kind of thing. And that really kept through.
But I mean, you were saying that about like Looney Tunes, like the adult influences, they have this. And then there are a bunch of, these are a bunch of talented artists that are horny adults and literary nerds producing stuff. And it's like, shocker that like influences people growing up. And I've got to laugh, Jeff, actually, I realized this. What arm is your Steinbeck quote on?
My left forearm, my inner left forearm. Right bicep is Chuck Jones style TNT barrel.
And then on your, you are like a Looney Tunes writer.
It's a newsprint style Steinbeck quote on my left forearm, yeah.
Yeah, so like this episode was made for you, which is hilarious and awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting confluence of interests. And if I can be 100% honest, like it wasn't, I was aware of the influence, but I didn't realize how deep the influence goes. Now, here's where the problematic parts happen. If you read Tortilla Flats, I don't particularly think it's problematic to say, here's a group of dudes that are having a good time, right? And these are the people that live in this area that I am from. And I want to celebrate their vibe, basically. Which is, by the way, it's a novella. It's pretty short. You should read it. It's great. But you can't deliver the same vibes that you get in Tortilla Flat with side characters in a 5-minute animated short. Like, you just don't have enough time to show the good-natured aspect of it. So while they are good-natured and they are having a good time and they are essentially paisanos, those mice, Maisanos, if you will, edit it out.
Jeff's getting the golf clap for that.
Right. But if you do not have the ability to sort of really capture the raison d'etre of these characters, then they come off as like dirt bags. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's anything, right? Like if you strip away the context from stuff, if you strip away all of the nuance that goes into it, and this, we both get to be the literary snobs when we do that. Like you watch a movie like, well, in the book that we discovered their dad did this and this and this and this, and that's why they act that way. You're like, great. That was never explained in the movie. That was never conveyed in the movie. They're just an asshole in the movie. You wanted to, if you're telling me I have to read a book to watch a movie to get the meaning of the movie, it's not a movie. That's not a film. It's, it's an illustration to the book.
Goofed.
Yeah.
They goofed. Yeah. It's a goof. You didn't get all that information. Yeah. And that's fair. And that also happens too, because how do you bring a 300-page book down to 2 hours? You usually have to pull a subplot. I think there's a great, like Chuck Palahniuk's Choke is a book I love very much. The movie had an incredible cast. They pulled out a very important plot point. And I was like, okay, but that actually, like by removing that plot point, you actually don't have the ribbon on the present anymore. Like you don't have the final finish. But okay, So anyway, these like the side characters, the side mice, if you will, they're the ones that people have been like, we're not fucking like that. Like that's the one that people have mostly had a problem with. So Cartoon Network had exclusive rights to airing Looney Tunes. They had bought those for a while. And in 1999, they essentially put a Speedy embargo on what they air. And they basically, because they were like, look, we have decades of content to put out. Decades. We don't need to show stuff that will do harm. We have enough. We could play stuff forever and not run out of stuff and without doing harm.
And that is a good start of a sentiment. I will agree. I think you and I are going to have like the same take on that. That's a good start to the sentiment.
It's a great start to the sentiment. It's also one of those things where you're like, all right, so this is a human decision and it's a corporate decision. Because the last thing we want is a boycott, right? The last thing we want is to be called racist. And not for nothing, but Ted Turner, being a Georgia billionaire, he was a surprisingly progressive-ish dude that didn't need the heat of his network doing a racism. But here's the problem. A huge portion of the Mexican American community fucking love Speedy Gonzales.
And can I also follow that up though and say that also if the only representations of your group have been problematic and the decision is, hey, we're going to stop airing these problematic things, that's great. Then you go back in time and you're like, where can I find me? My brother Daniel and I have had discussions and it's been like, I said it to him at one point, I was like, man, I really hate that in pop culture, right? I'm like a gangbanger or a car thief. And there was a really cool Hispanic character on Veronica Mars. And then in season 3, they're like, and spoiler alert, he's really a criminal. And I was like, cool. That's awesome. So yeah, it's like, agreed. Not only do they love him, it's like all the stuff, go listen to the beginning of the episode, everybody, that Jeff was saying. It's like, yeah, he's got some stereotypes, but that's fine. He is a hero. He is an awesome dude. Even if you want to claim the Speedy Gonzales name is a joke about his like sexual, like bad, like he's so fast, Speedy, haha. It's like, that's not how he comes off. He is awesome. And so it's going like, we're going to remove Speedy Gonzales. And Disney's Zorro was in syndication as well. And a lot of the same stuff, Jeff. A lot of the side characters have the traditional Mexican bad accents played by white people doing stereotypical things. But it's just like, yeah, if you remove that, then all of the cool role models that represented my group are now gone. And now it's just everything. So that happens too.
And it's important to note too that the voice was Mel Blanc. You can take that for what it's worth, but also most of the voices were Mel Blanc. And I don't think that he came at the accents of Speedy Gonzales in a racist way, but we can certainly look at it and understand, yeah, maybe having all the guys talk like this is not the best idea. Like it is not great. Even hearing me, even saying that, I'm like, oh, God damn it. Ah, God, I don't want to look at the comments. So here's a quote that I took from Ramezcla, and it says, Latinos found and attached ourselves to the small pieces of us that we connected with. In turn, we created Speedy Gonzales into our own hero. It doesn't matter what Speedy was when he was created. It matters what he is for Latinos everywhere now. A cunning, funny hero. No matter how many times they try to cancel Speedy, he and his millions of fans will simply grab our sombreros and say, Andale, andale, arriba, arriba. And I can't argue with that. Like that is the reality of this character in a large portion of that. And so that comes down to, if we want to refer to this in the cancel culture-ness, if we want to phrase it that colloquially, right? We see that the sort of embargo, the Speedy embargo, was primarily done by American white liberal and or corporate sources. So that's not uncommon, right? Like, don't even leave the door open to be accused of being problematic, right? Like, it's not uncommon, but it does get dicey, right? I think a good idea is like, during the Black Lives Matter campaign, like all these, a lot of white people were doing like the blackout thing on social media. And it was just this misplaced thing that was muddling up the actual reality of the message that was being put through, right? It's such a white liberal thing to do. I'm not immune to have done dumb white liberal things.
So Jeff, one of my like favorite example of this is another common thing that happens all the damn time, which is our movies. Best one I can think of recently is a movie called $1 Million Arm. It's a story about two Indian prospects, like from India, who make it to the major leagues in the United States because this guy puts on a reality contest. And if you look at the posters, it's John Hamm. And if you look at the posters, like, is this a story about John Hamm being the natural? And all sorts, of course, the Green Book, which at least based on a true story, and I thought that was nuanced, but, we love this story of this thrilling tale of racism or suffrage and that white guy that was there to help it out.
Going through the eyes of the white.
Right. Kevin Costner is like the white guy that helped out. It's like, we always have to do it. So that exactly what you're saying, that thing of being like, oh, have you thought about how this race, the white person you're saying, like the white corporate, have you thought about how this racism makes me feel? And you're like, cool, thank you for adding that to my, I have to deal with you feeling guilty about racism is how I have to deal with the racism against my people and pop culture.
I want to do one quick thing and then we're going to move from there.
Okay.
Do you know what has been considered one of the most historically accurate movies of all time?
What do you got?
The Last Samurai. The Tom Cruise does a Dances with Wolves with the samurai. It is considered one of the most historically accurate depictions of life in feudal Japan. Like it won like awards from like historical societies for doing stuff like that. But also, and it's like white savior.
Well, but I was going to say, so here, I'm going to stick here because I love that movie. Ken Watanabe is awesome in that movie.
He won an Oscar for it.
I think he got a nod. He should have won
nominated for supporting, right?
I will say this, my roommate and myself in college, Nick, who was awesome. So we loved, like when Harold and Kumar came out, we loved it because, admittedly it's India, but he was from Korea, Mexican American. We loved that kind of stuff. We loved The Last Samurai, and we could not find a goddamn poster of that movie with Ken Watanabe as in it. There are a bunch of Tom Cruises, but you're right.
Tom Cruise sells
if
tickets.
If you watch the movie, you're right. A great depiction. The hero is clearly that, and the trick that we've heard, want to throw back to stuff you brought up on this network before, Jeff, is thinking of the international market. They're going, if we try and internationally sell this great sprawling epic about feudal Japan and the end of the samurai era to the industrialization and the West coming in, no one's going to see it. If we put Tom Cruise's face on the cover, he's a star. He will sell it.
The best example for that is Great Wall.
Yep. Same thing.
Great Wall did not have Matt Damon in it until the Chinese investors demanded an American star show up on there, right? Like the Chinese demanded Matt Damon show up in that, like not to Matt Damon, but they were like, get us a white guy.
I think it was explicitly Matt Damon because people love Matt Damon. Matt Damon's awesome.
I'm not going to go and say whether that was right or wrong. The movie's forgettable. It has fallen into 47 Ronin territory where you're like, this movie is left the lexicon of society, right? Like we don't really talk about it anymore. But that is a common thing, right? If you're making movies, yes, it's art, but part of that art is we got to make money or else this is no point. How often are you going to get a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Right? Rarely. And even then they used actors that had already been seen by American actors, by American audiences in Chow Yun-fat and Michelle Yeoh at the time. They had appeared in Western films. Right? So, okay. In 2002, the League of United Latin American Citizens rallied to get him back. And then Cartoon Network caved. They ended the embargo. And he's been doing fine ever since. Like he shows up now and then. but he's never going to be the upper echelon. Like he's not going back up to that upper echelon. There are the characters like your Bugs, your Daffy, your Tweety and Sylvester, your Taz. That's the A-list, right? Marvin the Martian's another example of that. A great foil.
I kind of feel
A-list
Marvin
villain.
the Martian is like Speedy territory, but in terms of play, especially because he shows up,
Marvin the Martian, I think you're forgetting the cultural power that Marvin the Martian had in the 90s and the 2000s.
I guess that's
Referencing
commercials and
Clueless.
stuff. And yeah, I guess
Like he was like they created the Duck Dodgers cartoon because of the popularity of Marvin the Martian.
You know what's going to make me feel bad, Jeff? He does appear in Babylon 5. JMS loves Looney Tunes, and so Marvin the Martian, not Speedy Gonzales, does show up in B5. So I'll give that to you in the 90s.
Well, no, Marvin the again, like when Breckenmeyer is talking to Brittany Murphy in Clueless, and he's like, I'm thinking about going for like a Marvin the Martian decor. And she's like, oh my God, I can do Marvin the Martian. Like Marvin the Martian and Taz, they exploded in the 90s. Like they were huge. Marvin the Martian got his own video games. Like we're going to talk about that later. Anyway, so we get that, and then he gets returned, and then he's going to have sporadic appearances throughout, which we will talk about. But now, Dre, I've got some fun facts for you.
What do we got?
Some little chunks and tidbits of information that I can share with you as like a nice little finale. Here's some fun stuff. For example, in 2003, so right after the embargo, a little movie called Looney Tunes Back in Action came out. Cross culture here. It's a Joe Dante movie.
We love Joe Dante.
I don't know, are you familiar with this movie?
I think we even talked it on the Gremlins episode. And as remembered, I forget the animator, but Joe Dante and Gremlins 2 got an animator for the Looney Tunes out of retirement to do the stingers for the beginning.
Chuck Jones.
Yeah. So he just, was it Chuck Jones?
Animator, it was Chuck Jones.
Was it Chuck Jones?
Yeah. That was Chuck Jones was the animation supervisor on that.
Holy, for whatever reason in my head, it was like, well, I was like, oh, you got one of these. No, oh my gosh. So yeah, he got Chuck Jones out.
You guys don't know who Chuck Jones is. He's basically the guy that created many rules of slapstick animation. Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote were like the thing. He was brought in to fix Tom and Jerry. So he actually left Warner in, I believe, the late 50s into the 60s to then, I think it was the 60s, to work on Tom and Jerry because they needed that. That's why there's a significant shift and why there's an era of Tom and Jerry that looks much more Looney Tunesy. Chuck Jones famously was the supervising animator for How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Whoa, really? That tracks. I didn't know. But yeah, we know Joe Dante, who we love around here. Gremlins 2. Go listen to that episode.
Gremlins 2 director.
And I think on that episode, you said Looney Tunes Back in Action. If I recall, you said something like, better than, was all right. I think you said
it's a much better movie than its receipts showed. It's definitely of its time. Your two principals are what, Brendan Fraser and Jenna Elfman, I want to say. Is it Jenna Elfman? Huh, I think so. Which talk about, that's a very early 2000s name to bring up. Jenna Elfman, incredibly talented, but certainly emblematic of a time, right? So there's a sign where he's like in a cafeteria with Porky Pig, basically talking about his politically incorrect status. Periodic reminder, the failure of Looney Tunes Back in Action is why we never got Skate Jam.
What's Skate
starring
Jam?
Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk was going to be in a sequel to Space Jam called Skate Jam. I think he still got paid like $1 million for it. But the failure of Looney Tunes Back in Action led to the cancellation.
The number of awesome Looney Tunes properties that we could have had that we didn't. And I do want to throw all the way back to the very beginning, the Down Under guy that did the great walkthrough. In the end, he's like, and by the way, I believe Speedy is featured prominently in this upcoming Looney Tunes one. And it's that one that is infamously shelved for tax reasons.
Yeah, it's Wile E. Coyote versus Acme, yeah.
Everybody associated with it is like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. Yeah, this guy's like, hey, if you love Speedy Gonzales, you can't wait for this movie. And Warner Brothers is like, nah.
If Wile E. Coyote versus Acme comes out in theaters, I beg you all to go see it. And also that the one that it's been released on Max now, the Porky Pig and Daffy Duck one is pretty great. I'm about a quarter of the way through it right now. An interesting thing about Slowpoke Rodriguez that leads to the controversy is that there are implications, or at the very least inferences, that Slowpoke Rodriguez is a stoner. When he shows up, La Cucaracha, which is, of course, a famous ditty about that is, it's not about, but that is used to sort of reference Mexican characters. Like, if you don't know, but the lyrics basically boil down to like the cockroach can't walk anymore. He doesn't have legs because it's lacking marijuana at this point. They reference weed in that song, but also we might be jumping to that conclusion based entirely on it's a perfectly stereotypical Mexican song that people have heard. It's like, it's sitcom shorthand for when somebody is a dirtbag or a weirdo, that their car horn is La Cucaracha. You ever see that in like a movie, TV show? Somebody hits their horn and it's La Cucaracha. And that's a shorthand for saying like, hey, this guy, what's going on with this guy?
It's like, it's usually, I've seen it used, I'm trying to remember, I can't picture off the top of my head, but it is often used as a button to a bad car. Like a junker shows up, you're like, look at this guy, and they press the horn and La Cucaracha plays. And that, before we've even seen whoever steps out of the car, we know everything we need to know about that character.
Exactly, right? Like, it's a good shorthand song, right? Could go either way. These animators and these writers are not stupid, but also we've had 60 plus years to create the narrative that we might want to believe based entirely on 21st century thinking. You know, like, we don't, you know, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I had mentioned this earlier, but a lot of Speedy shorts and design stuff is influenced by John Steinbeck, especially 1958's Tortilla Flaps, 1961's Cannery Woe. Steinbeck, and I had said this before, wrote heavily about the Mexican community in the Salinas Valley. And around this time, most famous author, one of the most famous authors in the country, it tracks, right? All of that tracks. They don't try to hide it. It's not one of those things where I'm just saying, well, he's my favorite author, so this must be the case. It's very clear that, you know, that's the case. He was ingrained in migrant communities, in farming communities. Steinbeck wrote about what he saw, generally speaking, and whether you want to discredit the validity of what he saw, I don't think he really ever put the protagonists that he was seeing in that negative. I mean, they certainly were complicated characters, but in the negative light of, you know, look at these lazy dirtbags. It's like Tortilla Flat. It's not about these guys being lazy. It's about these guys being good-natured doofuses.
I've got to say, you've got a lot of cool friends, patreon.com/Jeff made it here. Jeff talked to many of them. I mean, we don't get into this. One of your cool friends, Dana Gould, hugely influential, of course, in The Simpsons. And as we kind of have agreed back and forth, unfairly, I'm trying to look for the word. I want to say maligned, that's your favorite word, but he was not portrayed well in a documentary that I thought was a good documentary from Hari Kondabolu about the problems with Apu. Similar character to Speedy Gonzales, a representation of a community that has problematic aspects, and you have cool friends that even get to discuss stuff like that. I'm curious if you have any cool friends on the Warner Brothers side that you've ever gotten to talk, because I'm willing to bet. The shame is they're probably aged out, but I'm willing to bet, you know, many of those people from Warner Brothers would love talking to you, to be when you're like, I recognize this from Steinbeck, like, oh yeah, you caught that. That was intentional from this.
Yeah, the people I know that work for Warner, like animation, my friend Jannard does backgrounds. So he's a background animator for a lot of like DC properties and stuff like that. So it doesn't really go in there. Plus, it's a good thing to remember that these are 60 plus year old cartoons, right? Anyway, so we got the Steinbeck thing out of the way. 1962, Pat Boone breaks the top 10 with a song titled Speedy Gonzales.
And that song is racist as hell. So I didn't cut you off to beat you to it.
Yeah. Jeff. He also tells Mel Blanc, or he hired Mel Blanc to do Speedy Gonzales on the track. In 1965, there's a movie called Wild on the Beach that has a song in it called Little Speedy Gonzales, written by Stan Ross and Bobby Beverly and performed by a band called the Astronauts. In 2006, so we're going to jump forward a little bit here, in that Speedy Gonzales actually, because he's so popular among Spanish-speaking groups, Volkswagen actually licensed him as their Spanish language spokesperson. So commercials that aired in Spanish-speaking countries had Speedy Gonzales in them, which that's fun.
I'm actually watching
also
one
it's
right now.
weird.
I'm not hating this commercial. Yeah.
No, they're pretty good. Yeah. They do a very good job. 2006 was a really good era of when they were making commercials really sort of creatively, I guess is a good way to do it. Like they were using technology in very creative ways at the time.
The narrative
All right.
of this one is interesting because it's saying Speedy tries to run into a cheese factory and says, I can't hold it, so I need my Volkswagen Golf to carry all this cheese. We'll allow it, I guess.
Yeah, you can fit it all in the Golf. It's got a lot of space in the back. Dre, we're going to get into something that I know you are going to be very excited about, and that is the video game antics of Speedy Gonzales. I'm going to release these in order, and there's some weird shit happening here. So in 1993, we officially get our first official game for Speedy Gonzales. It is the Game Boy. All of these games are going to come out after Sonic the Hedgehog, and they are, to sound repetitive, you're going to hear me say it's basically a Sonic the Hedgehog clone, but with Speedy Gonzales. They're almost all 2D platformers that invoke speed, very similar, like bumpers and things like that. Like it's very easy. So 1993 for the Game Boy, that's the cream spinach color, black and white Game Boy. We get a game just called Speedy Gonzales. It is developed by Citizen, published by Sunsoft. This is a platformer. Almost every game he shows up in is a platformer. It has decent critical reviews. One of his best reviewed games. The images look very clean on this game. No notes. They start out on a pretty good note. It's not changing any rules. It's a Sonic clone. It's not changing anything, but it's kind of nice, right? In 1995, that's where we're going to get sort of like the most stuff, because we get across all Sega platforms with an asterisk, meaning the Game Gear, the Master System in 1995.
That was the 8-bit one.
They were still making games for the Master in 95. Yeah, it's their version of the NES. Pause button on the system. Very stupid. In the Genesis, right? We have a game called Cheese Catastrophe, starring Speedy Gonzales. This is developed by Cryo Interactive, and it is published by Sega. This is weird. This is a weird story behind this game, because the only version that gets a US release is the Game Gear version. Released to mixed reviews, that's going to be a theme. Almost every game is going to circle within the same 10-point range of 45 to 55% ratings. I couldn't find where this was officially released, but it seems to me, if I can use my context clues, Germany, which explains the Volkswagen Golf thing, that he might be a popular character in Germany. You never know. They love Hasselhoff.
I was going to say, this is like a callback. There was, for those that don't remember, Norm Macdonald in the 90s had a recurring bit on a show called Saturday Night Live, still on, or just say, I have a theory, Germans love David Hasselhoff, and we're going to have Jeff do his own Germans love Speedy Gonzales, and the facts are lining up with you.
There are clues that lead into there, but nothing that I could concretely say that. And I legitimately, I went down kind of a rabbit hole and couldn't find that information, unless I was just, because the video game stuff is actually the last stuff I took notes on. So I might have just been word blind.
The Wikipedia article is shockingly sparse for a video game, because I've done a lot of video game research for this show and other purposes, and just other thing, some of the Nintendo games we did, like Punch Out, they have release dates in other countries, sales figures, all this. The Speedy Gonzales Cheese Catastrophe is just blank.
Which is also weird because it's an English pun. It's English wordplay. Catastrophe having cat in the beginning, because it's cat astrophe.
Yeah.
It's cat hyphen astrophe. In German, are they just going to release it with the English title, right? I don't know. The other thing that I'm going to take a educated guess on, specifically on the Mega Drive, and of course the Master System, would be Brazil. Brazil famously still is getting Genesis games.
Really? What?
Yeah, it's a long, long story. It would be a whole separate episode. Talk about Brazil and its love and its history with
Throw
Sega.
it in the queue, Jeff. Brazil and Sega, man, clip or something. I want to hear more from Jeff about this.
Yeah,
but
it's
another day.
Very interesting. But so I'm going to estimate that game got a Brazilian release. It would make sense. Are you looking it up right now, the history of Brazil and Sega?
Not yet. I did did try and look up the Cheese Catastrophe, and I'm reading the rest of the notes on the other games. So yeah, the fact that this so 90s, right, to have I'm stealing what you're going to say next. And it also got a Super Nintendo release as well. The release on both systems, and unfortunately, unlike Aladdin, we didn't get a good one. So Aladdin had a really good,
and that's an important part of the console wars and the licensing problem. And we could talk more about that later, but in 1995, you're right. We get a Super Nintendo game called Speedy Gonzales, Los Gatos Benditos. Again, most reviewers are like, oh, I'm sorry, developed by Sunsoft, published by Acclaim, right? Which is really funny because they published, the Sega one, it was done by Cryo and published by Sega, right? But in this one, Sunsoft, so Sunsoft has, we're going to assume, the license with Nintendo. Yep, to create these. Famously, the good examples, you're right, is Aladdin and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Turtles in Time ended up being sort of like a very good arcade port to the SNES. Hyperstone Heist on Sega Genesis, which is a different version of a very similar game.
I kind of want to play that now. That sounds fun. Just to at least check it out. I know Turtles in Time.
Yeah, but it's just they couldn't. They weren't allowed to do both systems, right? They just weren't allowed to do that. So Los Gatos Benditos, predominantly mixed reviews, but that edge towards the negative side. And most reviewers are like, this is just a bad Sonic clone. It's clunky, it's sloppy, and this gives us podcast synergy. Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog and then Speedy Gonzales. Congratulations, look at us. In 2000, so this is in the middle of the embargo by Cartoon Network, we have a Game Boy Advance game called Speedy Gonzales Aztec Adventure, developed by Sunsoft and published because it's Nintendo. Beautiful game, not particularly great, but it's a good-looking game, not a good game. Okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about are actually games where he shows up, but he's not a main character, and this is weird.
I almost wish we had done this next game. Sonic Spinball was perfect, Jeff, but like this could, like if we had been embargoed, if you said, Dre, sorry, I've got beef with someone at Sega, we can't do Sonic Spinball. The next game you're going to mention, Jeff, this feels like a fever dream. I want to hear you say this.
So we all know how high Pokemon was riding for the Game Boy, right? Pokemon was a thing. The thing about Pokemon is Pokemon gets 2 releases at a time, right? Basically, you're like red and blue, and then you're like, I don't know, ruby and sapphire, like whatever.
Yellow, you get the other one. In Japan, they had 3 because you had
Yellow
the 3
came
starters.
out as like a half sequel, right?
Because that was when Pikachu was huge. We got to give you one where Pikachu can be your main. Yeah.
So of course you're going to get Pokemon clones, fight them, collect them, use them, right? And so in 2000. We get a Game Boy Color Looney Tunes themed Pokemon clone that has 2 games that are played from essentially opposite directions. The first one you get is called Looney Tunes Collector Alert, in which you are playing as you're playing just as Bugs, I believe. And then Looney Tunes Collector Martian Revenge, where you are playing as Marvin the Martian. Now, both games are pretty symmetrical. They're based from the perspective of either Bugs or Marvin, as I said. And these are just simply reskinned Pokemon clones. Ironically, the best reviewed games that have Speedy in it, but all he is like essentially an ally you can collect and then utilize when it's necessary. So each character has the thing they're good at, and you need to use them at the right time. So when you need Speedies, you would use that character. Again, none of these games are innovative. Like there's no innovation here. Licensed games are very rarely innovative because you kind of, it happens. GoldenEye is probably the best example of a way that console gaming was innovated. And even then, Doom, like it started.
Can we point out though that like something very obvious about GoldenEye is a lot of the stuff they had built was like others, you got like the Aztec temple and stuff. It's like you do have the sets that are based on the movie. The playthrough of the game is kind of based on the movie. And then when you have the thing that made that game was multiplayer, and you're like, I don't remember this from the movie, but it's so fun killing my friends. I'll forgive it.
You don't need to remember it from the movie. It's multiplayer. It's great.
Yeah.
And that was sort of, in a way, and I hate to say this because Rare really put a killer game out there, right? It was Rare that did that.
Yeah, it was Rare.
They made a banger of a game. It seems like it was accidentally innovative. Like, I don't think they were planning on becoming one of the 3 most iconic games of the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know.
But
it is always hard to know what's going to hit, because it's not only, it doesn't just have to be good. It has to be good and hit at the right time and hit the right audience. And it's like, they did a follow-up like Zero. They had some game that had like Dark in the title.
Perfect
and they went
Dark.
off on their
Yeah,
own. Perfect Dark.
Yeah.
And it was fine, but it's just like,
It was a good
like,
game. Yeah, it's just not James Bond.
You know, we've said stuff like this about, for instance, the mistimed WMAC Masters. We're like, man, if that show had come out 2 years earlier, it would have blown people's brain. We have admitted the paradox where it couldn't have come out 2 years earlier because the stuff happening 2 years earlier is why it got created. But the same thing here is like, sometimes it's the right spot, right time. And that's perfect with Speedy, where you're kind of noting all this stuff, which is just like, he hit in the like late 50s or mid 50s, and just like they've tried again in the future and he just can't quite seem to hit.
Yes. In 2003, we are getting the Looney Tunes Back in Action game, developed by Warthog Games and co-published by EA and Warner Brothers Interactive together. So this game, Interactive Entertainment, excuse me, this game was like, Looney Tunes Back in Action was considered to be the creation of the Looney Tunes Renaissance. This was going to be the thing that really pushed it. I mean, we can say Space Jam really implemented that in the beginning, but this was going to be the thing that's like, they're ready to go. Like, we're ready to do great things with that. I think it would have been great. I think Warner is actually better than Disney at capturing the zeitgeist. I think Disney focuses so heavily on being timeless that they do not acknowledge time, if that makes sense. And I think the Looney Tunes do a way better job of it. I would say I prefer Warner Animation as far as like storyline and jokes to Disney. Not saying that Disney is bad. It's just, and there's great Disney animation that has come out that is great, but it's like, it does all tend to be very timeless. Whereas like Warner Brothers tends to definitely sort of strangle the zeitgeist in a very fun way, in a way that it becomes its own. You know, Bugs Bunny's a timeless character that was rooted in an actor that has been dead for 40 years or 50 years, you know, like, that's cool, right? Like they did that. They became satire that mainstreamed itself, which I think is great. So this game, mixed reviews. It kind of bombed. It's for all of the systems that you would think in 2003, right? PS2. Well, actually, it doesn't get an Xbox release, but PS2, GameCube, and Game Boy Advance. But, you know, it's being co-published by EA and Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment. And it's mixed. You play as either Bugs or Daffy. Speedy is like an enemy in this game. I've decided not to look into it.
But what's interesting, we kind of discussed this back at the front, where Bugs and Daffy really are villains. So, like, if you're going to play them as the protagonist, it does make sense that Speedy the hero would be the villain, but then that's all over the place. And it does appear that both the movie and the games, when you're talking like, they were in the worst spot, that middling spot of like, they're all right. So, you know, the movie bombs, $80 million budget for $54 million worldwide gross. That is painful.
Yeah.
And the game, you know, it's like in the 50s and 60s, which is fine, but like, man, remember the console wars and the game, you know, we had like Halo on the Xbox. We had Final Fantasy
console wars. Yeah.
We had like Final Fantasy X on PlayStation, as like Spider-Man 2 came out at some point, which I think was also cross-platform. Like
that was cross-platform.
We had all of these properties fighting on these different platforms, producing innovative things. And you get just like a middling platformer based on an IP that's from the 60s. You're like, all right.
I got to be honest. Well, I mean, you're saying based on an IP from the 60s, but it's based on a movie that happened in this year. So, like, I don't think that's particularly fair. But what I will say that kind of builds to what you're saying is the game, and I think maybe the worst thing that you can be as a video game is mid. Because let's say, for example, one of the worst video games of all time is Superman 64. It is a turd among turds. It is the unbelievable. I can guarantee you more people have played it because it's terrible. And people are like, I got to try this worst game.
Yeah,
You know,
I've seen some playthroughs, and you're like that first level, because like infamously,
rings
either
and
the first or second
smoke.
level, you've got to fly and collect a bunch of coins, and this is the intro of the game. I have the first or second level, and it's impossible. It is impossible.
It's a terrible game. I rented it. I rented it after hearing it was bad because I wanted to see how bad it was.
How far did you get?
I turned it off after like maybe 40 minutes of trying to fly through the fucking rings. I think I ended up getting to like the actual platforming parts of it, and even that was just, it's so bad. Like the rendering is, it's just a bad game. It's bad, right? But like being a mid game might even be worse because you don't even get the curiosity of being so bad it's good. You know, like Tommy Wiseau is eating lunch off of making one of the worst movies ever because it's so bad that it has circled around to being a fun curiosity.
It is to steal a phrase that might show up later, it's like, you got to check this out. Even if it's bad, you got to check this out. Yeah, like I said, the reviews for both Looney Tunes Back in Action, the movie, and the game is like, like you kind of like Looney, you know, I mean, and that's the comparable you're giving is Space Jam, right? Where in Space Jam, you're just like, it sounds like a fever dream, and then the acting is bad, but it's hilarious. You're like, oh my God, you've got to watch Michael Jordan try and act against a green screen. It's hilarious. Like
Space Jam is boy hocus pocus. If I can simplify and boil it down, it's something that is not good.
You don't think Hocus Pocus is good?
Hocus is not a good movie.
Interesting.
But it is ingrained in our DNA as a good memory. So
I just really miss Erie, Indiana. Maybe I just, you know, I wanted the guy from Erie, Indiana to have a good career. They didn't even bring him back for Hocus Pocus 2. Like Omri Katz, I think is his name.
Yeah.
I miss Erie, Indiana. That's what I'm going to say.
I'm a nice guy. So I want to do a quick little dive into like famous Speedy Gonzales voice actors. There have been a lot of Speedy Gonzales voice actors, and I'm not going to call all of them, even though they're all very talented people. I really picked like the highlight names of who has voiced him throughout the past. One most famously, of course, is Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc from 1953 up to 1989. But he's not the only person during that 46-year period to do that, but he's the main one. It's Mel Blanc. I don't know if we'll ever get a voice actor as good or as prolific as Mel Blanc, and I would say
Cummings, maybe
second place would be Billy West.
Which, yeah, I mean, he shows up for,
he's actually going to be something that we'll get into, which is that because Billy West is, I would say, sort of the closest thing to a modern Mel Blanc, right?
Better good, yeah.
Jim Cummings is great, but I don't think he has the range of somebody like a Mel Blanc or, in this case, a Billy West, right? Billy West is the Red M&M and Doug and Fry and Zoidberg, and at one point, Speedy Gonzales in Looney Tunes Back in Action, the video game.
He was Doug.
Got him.
Huh.
What?
I didn't know that. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, he was both Ren and Stimpy at one point. Like, a genius. He almost got Saturday Night Live without even auditioning. He just couldn't shuffle off his demons at the time.
Oh.
And so he blew the non-audition auditions. He was that well-known and that talented. We get, obviously this is unofficial, but Seth Green does it with Robot Chicken. He got in there. Fred Armisen did it a couple of times for both the Looney Tunes show as well as Looney Tunes Rabbit's Run. And Fred Armisen is he's sort of this cultural chameleon where you see him and you're like, is this cool? You know, like he had played Barack Obama famously on SNL and stuff like that. And you're like, I don't know what's going on. But he doesn't seem like a person who would seek to make cruel art.
And I think it's Venezuela. I looked it up. I think he's like part Venezuelan, like at least heritage wise. And I mean, that's the rough part. I brought like Antonio Banderas is one of my favorite Mexican hero actors for Zorro as an actual, not from Spain, from Mexico in the movie. Love that movie. But even there, they're like, yeah, you're all brown, right? It's like, we'll take it. It's like, you're not putting Anthony Hopkins in blackface. We'll take it.
Yeah. So another one that I think is really fun was we get Carlos Alzraki, who is a buddy. He's done Mint on Card. If you don't know who Carlos Alzraki is, we can go down to that Nicktoons run. He is Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life. He is the Taco Bell Chihuahua.
What? Oh my, he got Speedy and the Taco. My God. Like
he
that.
Also is, I think you'd know him visibly as being one of the main characters in Reno 911.
That was a wild show. I loved it. I love when, when Comedy Central had, anyway.
But yeah, so we got that going for us. Let's see. And then, so we got that. That was actually an appearance. He played an old Speedy, like a real-time aged Speedy Gonzales on Al Madrigal's comedy special known as Half Like Me. So he does that voice of old-timey Speedy Gonzales. And I'd say, like, most recently and most well-known from Space Jam: A New Legacy, Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias, who, when he got that, he was like, I'd like to see cancel culture come for it now. And it's like, I don't really think it was cancel culture that really, you know what, that's fine.
That I would agree, just to briefly say it, briefly stay on cancel culture, but you brought it up. It's cancel culture. We love to think of it as the internet mob getting angry. And that, I'm not going to be dismissive and say that doesn't happen. Certainly, enough people get angry, they can do things. That's happened across history before and after the internet. The internet has made it easier. But in terms of things that knock culture, like someone actually getting canceled, I want to bring up like Norm Macdonald. It is literally someone in a boardroom feeling uncomfortable. So it is like, yes, as you were mentioning, Speedy got canceled, and it was probably by some executive, some C-level person that said, this makes me feel awkward and I don't like feeling bad, take it off the air. Norm Macdonald did not get canceled for many of his, politically incorrect jokes. Conan and others would have him on late into his life, making hugely inappropriate jokes. They thought he was hilarious. And even after, of course, his passing probably helped public, people are, after someone has passed, you're going to be much nicer. But like, people had nice things to say about Norm Macdonald all throughout his career. He was not canceled because he said stuff that had an internet mob come after him. He was canceled because an executive didn't like him. So to the Gabriel Iglesias saying,
you mean on SNL?
And SNL.
He was canceled for making fun of O.J. Simpson.
For making fun of O.J. Simpson, exactly. And that's the thing is, you are more likely in the entertainment biz to be canceled because you upset someone powerful in the wrong position. Sometimes that can be related to, hey, people on the internet are mad at me, but it's more, is that C-level executive person going to listen to that or feel bad by that too?
Yes. So that's who we get. And yeah, and Gabriel Iglesias was really like sticking his middle finger up to cancel culture. And everyone's like, nobody's what? Okay, man, congrats. We don't care. Like, yeah, that's awesome, man. Like, we didn't cancel him. Nobody really did. Cartoon Network made that decision from a liberal ethical, white liberal ethics decision plus business ethics decision or just a business decision in general. So that's like who we have. And again, there's still a ton more. I just kind of really wanted to highlight a couple of names that you may have heard. But there are great ones. I think Eric Bauza did some at one point. Like, there's a bunch. Now, merch. Look, it's been a very long time. This dude's been around for 70 years, right? 72 years. So you're going to have a lot of crap.
How dare you? So, at first I was like, 53 isn't set. Oh my God, it is.
Yeah.
Math sucks. Math and aging sucks, Jeff.
I know. My dad was born in 1960. Now, plush. There was a lot of plushes, right? Kind of crap you can win at Six Flags for getting a basketball in the hoop. There were some Pepsi glasses in 1973 that I'm sure gave people a lot of lead poisoning. It's mostly crap, PVC toys and things like that. But there is something that I wanted to highlight just because I remember it so vividly that it's going to be personal. So from like 90 to 93, Tyson got the Looney Tunes branding, and they slapped different terrible frozen meals in a box that says Looney Tunes meal. And they tried to throw a character and have a food that would match. And Speedy Gonzales was a beef enchiladas meal. I think about this a lot for the couple reasons of it's literally just a frozen dinner. But this was the kid cuisine era where you had a lot of latchkey kids. You had a lot of kids whose parents were working, they weren't around, and they wanted to like inspire the kids to eat something. So why not give them a plate full of microwaved sodium?
How were these? I'm digging the look of these beef enchiladas.
Okay, so we were not a family that had a lot of money. So like wanting them was a much different scenario than getting them. But I did manage to convince my mom to get them for us, and I got a couple. And I'm gonna try to remember, but there was like Bugs Bunny was chicken nuggets, Daffy was spaghetti and meatballs. We had the beef enchiladas. I believe there was a Chaz and Bugs Bunny like ravioli. Huh. There's Daffy and Elmer did pasta as well. So there were pasta versions. There was a Foghorn Lego. But basically, you know, those were basically Chef Boyardee, right? Chef Boyardee pastas. The Roadrunner had a chicken sandwich. Wile E. Coyote had like a hamburger pizza. Huh. Yeah, interesting choice. Yosemite Sam had barbecue chicken legs.
That tracks, actually.
Barbecue chicken drumsticks. Yeah, I mean, they did a good job of like kind of matching them up. The Wile E. Coyote one was weird. I was like, hamburger pizza. Tweety had mac and cheese. I'm assuming that's just a yellow thing.
We've done like, you know, we did cereal mascots for Halloween. Some of the like food-based mascots and stuff like this is definitely fascinating. Because I remember, the period of the 90s where using cartoons to sell you microwave meals and stuff. You're right. There is something hyper emblematic of the 90s about that.
Sylvester had fish sticks.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right?
Obviously. Yeah.
The one thing he doesn't try to eat in the cartoons.
But he's a cat.
I know.
But they could also sell it that way. He can't get the bird or anything. You're like, how is Sylvester so big if he never catches the bird? He's got his fish sticks.
You're not going to eat. They're not going to give you fried parakeet or mouse.
I mean, that's in Bugs Bunny's one, you said. Anyway.
But and so I remember wanting these so bad as like a 9-year-old fat kid, but so broke. But my mom did cave in once or twice. And I remember I got the hamburger pizza, the Wile E. Coyote hamburger pizza. I loved Wile E. Coyote. I've always loved Wile E. Coyote. He's such a fascinating character. And then the beef enchiladas, because I loved this spicy white people Mexican food when I was a kid. Loved me an old El Paso taco kit and Speedy Gonzales beef enchiladas by Tyson.
By the way, Jeff, did you look at the back of this image you sent me? What's on the back of this box?
Like the directions on the back of the box?
Yeah, look at the back of the box. So if you look there, as Jeff's describing, and we'll have an image somewhere, I'm sure. It'll probably be up on like Jeff's Instagram. Follow Jeff as Hey There Jeffro2. That's Jeffro and the number 2 on Instagram. He is a fantastic follow, and he got canceled randomly and has to rebuild his following, which sucks.
Yeah.
They
got me. They cancel cultured me.
Again, and cancel culture isn't the internet mob. It's somebody in a boardroom deciding they don't like it. But
in the notes I released I showed Dre an example of like the box of it. And I was just like, hey,
and if you look at the back of the box, there's something really cool, Jeff, that may have burned about $8.12 in Dre's eBay pocket.
Oh no, you got the trading cards.
There were custom trading. Man, Jeff, I would love to be able to crack these. Like if we could find a case of these frozen and crack them and try and get the full, I think there are 8 sets. Didn't do that, but there were trading cards. I mean, Jeff, somehow this episode on Speedy Gonzales, it has Steinbeck, your tattoos, trading cards on food you wanted as a kid, associations with directors we've loved. Like somehow this is another Nexus nerd episode somehow. And I cannot tell you how delighted I am because we're at the end. Yeah. When Jeff pitched this, it wasn't a hard pitch, but what's funny is like Jeff started, and I was like, maybe we'll find we can look at a movie. I wasn't skeptical. What
You
I'll say,
went with no, you went around, you went along with it. You were like, okay.
I actually do want to explain this.
Definitely,
What
I
was
could
going to
see that
say
you
is
were skeptical. Yeah,
I wasn't skeptical. I was like, how do I fit it in the classic nerd box? I was like, oh, do we look at the Oscar-winning film from the 60s? Do we find a specific thing? I was like, should we find a specific Speedy property that we focus on and do what we've done in other nerd episodes where we do like a blow by blow and then talk outwards? And you were like, Dre, absolutely not. We're going to talk everything Speedy. And as you've seen, we've crammed it into about 2 hours, which is amazing. I was like, you want to talk all of Speedy Gonzales? You're like, yes. And I was like, you sure? You're like, absolutely. I was like, let's, and Jeff's eyes, like he was so excited about this and I can see why. And I am delighted it lived up to like, the brainstorming session. And my skepticism really was more exactly. I was like, so you want to talk everything Speedy? You're like, the history, the movies, the cartoons, the merch, everything, Dre. And I was like, well, all right.
The existence of the character is so interesting. I actually think the existence of this character is he's maybe the most interesting Looney Tune as far as context goes. Like what he's tied into. I would say the Tasmanian Devil is another one because, what a come from behind victory for the Tasmanian Devil to become on the platform, on the podium, of gold, silver, and bronze. Like Taz is up there, right? It's like Bugs, Daffy, and Taz, right? Those have got to be
that is the big three. I'd give you
that's
that.
The big three, I'd assume, right? So, like to see that, but Speedy having this tie-in to a cultural existence, right? Like that an entire community is sort of trying to figure out something about it. Like people are not understanding if this character is problematic or is not problematic. Many people saying yes, many people saying no. Is there an actual answer? No, because that's subjectivity.
I mean, this feels very, sorry to keep us a little long. This feels very like in the vein of good actors that are of a marginalized group. And then they're like, hey, can you be the convenience store clerk? And famously, Aziz Ansari has said, he had a point where he's just like, I am not going to be a stereotype in movies. He's like, do not send me cab driver role, etc. And, you look at the movies he's in where he's like bit parts, I think in
So that's why Kumail was in Stuber.
Huh.
Because
I think at that point he just wasn't big enough name. But basically. But I guess all I'm just saying is, we hit that point where you're like, I'm a representative of this group and the roles I'm being offered are bad. Now, of course, it's a cartoon mouse who has no autonomy, but that's the thing. Is you're like, he himself, no problems with him, like, and the roles we're going to put you in are. And so that's the dichotomy, I would say. As I'd say, no issues with the character, issues with the storylines they put around the character quite often.
And the character is a hero.
He's awesome.
That, I think, is so important. And I mean, it was clearly explained by members of the Mexican-American community and the Mexican community in general. That's like, no, you don't understand. Like, we took the thing that you gave us and we elevated it to legendary status. Like, the community is so strong and they support, they come out, they do it, right? And like, so you do see like a lot of times, like, they'll be like, yeah, we love this character. While we might have been a little bit like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have all of the side characters be
racist stereotypes,
cowardly stereotypes or weak stereotypes. But like, Speedy Gonzales is like Superman. Like, he is a Mexican superhero and a very rare thing in Looney Tunes to have a hero character. Most of the times it's circumstances that create the comedy, whereas Speedy Gonzales himself is usually like, I'm here to rescue and fix the problem. Like, oh, we can't get any food. Oh, Speedy showed up. He's going to take care of it and he's going to feed the community. Like, why wouldn't Mexicans love that, right? Like, I mean, as that character. And that's sort of like what they're saying. Like,
representation. The side characters that Speedy is playing against is how we were represented in culture at the time. So it's like, if you're looking on TV and you're going to see that, if the bad voice or whatever and the lazy, that's going to show up. It's like, at least give me a story that I'm already used to that. I'm already going to see that everywhere. Give me a story where there's at least a positive character I can associate with. Speedy Gonzales is that.
So while certainly maligned through the lens of, modern sort of like, I mean, I don't want to say wokeism, but you know what I'm saying? Like through the lens of like a modern mentality, people might be like, oh, this is a problematic character, him and Pepe Le Pew. And it's like, I wouldn't classify them together. Number one. And like, I get it. Like the Pepe Le Pew being like the horny, aggressive, essentially sexual.
But again, Pepe didn't go anywhere. Like I said, you can look as recently. I guarantee there's some sitcom I'm not watching right now that has a Pepe Le Pew character because they love that. Like I said, how many Oscars? What's it? Like I said, Dan Fielding, drop the actor's name.
Oh, horny guy. Yeah, John Larroquette.
Yeah, he
also known as the Mirror Master from television's The Batman. Wait, you mean the opening narrator of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, John Larroquette?
He was in what the 11th Kingdom was as well, which was good. Yeah. Anyway, but
yes, like the horny character is there, but also that character has become more of like a visually and vocally horny character as opposed to a gropey, pursuant character. That like we're okay losing that energy.
I guess what I'm saying is that's stuck around. Some people are like, oh man, he's up there with it. It's like, but you keep putting Pepe Le Pew on screen and you took off this. Yeah.
They've really kind of deep sixed Pepe.
No. What sorry, Jeff, what I mean by that is pop culture is still keeping a variant of that character around, even if you're like watered down. Whereas I'm like, give me more Speedy Gonzaleses. If you want to make him more culturally appropriate, great, give me that. But the flip side is like, we're going to turn off the old episodes of him and we're not going to give you that representation, which is awesome, Jeff.
Dre, in all fairness, I know way more horny people than I know heroic people. So
there are probably more horny people than heroic Mexicans, but we did get Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle is pretty good. We'll take it.
Blue Beetle's great. And I think that, like Speedy Gonzales being an adapted heroic character to the Mexican community then sort of allows a lot of people, and Warner specifically with, Blue Beetle and everything like that, of being like, you know what? We should be giving that level of visibility to this community. And we should be recognizing them as powerful heroes and that don't have to necessarily ignore their culture, but they also don't have to like they're not wearing like a Mexican flag running around, but they don't ignore their culture. They embrace it, but it's not the only thing that they have. And I think that is a truly beautiful thing that you can do with pop culture, is to allow visibility, to allow representation. And while it may have got started on the wrong foot with Speedy Gonzales among the Mexican community in, pop culture and animation and things like that, that the Leviathan that this character became within that community is something to be marveled at. Pardon the DC reference there. They marveled at, but if I'm talking Warner, I'd say DC'd at. But
no one says that. Never say that again, Jeff, ever.
So in the long term, I wanted to do this episode because of how culturally significant this character is. And I knew going in, because you were like, why don't we just do a short? I'm like, we're not doing a 2-hour episode on a 5-minute short, kind of a thing. I was like, we can't do that because you can't watch all of them, because then you're watching, like 800 minutes or whatever of time or whatever, or 200 minutes or whatever. But the character is so beautifully ripe for that discussion and that study. And I absolutely am so glad that you allowed me to sort of get my way with this episode, because I absolutely love it.
So I'm going to give you some perspective heading into next month's Nerd. This is an episode that Jeff had a vision for and Jeff fought for, and we can all see where it ended, and it is great. And next month, we're going to have an episode that Dre had a vision for and Dre fought for. And you can leave your comments over at patreon.com/Jeff May. Which of us fights for the right thing? Which of us is the Speedy Gonzales who fights for good and what's right? And which of us is the nihilist who fights for insane things? Find out on next month's Nerd. Jeff, let's go to the teasers. What do you got?
Well, if you're listening for free, thank you so much. If you want to get this early, head on over to patreon.com/JeffMay, where you get episodes of this early, plus early access to uncensored episodes with bonus content of Jeff Has Cool Friends, as well as the exclusive Patreon show, The Monthly Flow, with Andrea Gazzetta. You can also get stuff in the mail if you sign up for that rookie card tier. And speaking of getting stuff in the mail, if you want to check out Jeff Has Cool Cards, the YouTube page, we do breaks there on Wednesdays. We do mailbags on Fridays. The more people we get in, the more breaks we can do. I got some really cool stuff to show off too with you guys, so that'll be very exciting. What else do we got? All the stuff I do with Adam Todd Brown on the You Don't Even Like This network. All this Tom and Jeff Watch Batman on Gamefully Unemployed. And Mint on Card is the second Friday of every month at Blast from the Past in beautiful Magnolia in Burbank, California. But, Dre, in August, which will be the next show that people will be listening to, it will actually be the third Friday of the month. It'll be the 15th. Because
Third Friday.
It's going to be the third. It's yeah, but it's not. It's like the 15th. It's a very close, because the first Friday is the first. But it just so happens that I will be in Las Vegas the second Friday of the month with my Mint on Card co-producer Lisa Harden. We'll be at the Star Trek Mission Vegas convention for her birthday.
You know what? I'm hearing Jeff pop up Mint on Card at Star Trek Vegas. That's what Star Trek fans want. Bunch of comedians doing jokes.
I mean, they show that at the end of Trekkies.
Huh.
Star Trek fans that like comedy.
In the middle of the convention.
People like comedy, Dre.
Where am I going in this? Wow. I became the villain unexpectedly.
Wow. Can't believe you'd be so ableist.
Yeah.
But again, I am at Hey There Jeffro 2 on Instagram and Hey There Jeffro everywhere else. Thank you so much. Dre, what do you got going on? I know you've been a busy bee.
I have been a busy bee. I do definitely have to shout out, Jeff, your most recent card break with Dave Christopher Bell over at Jeff Has Cool Cards. Check that out. Great stuff. Like, again, Jeff does a lot of fun stuff. You are amazing, Jeff. So follow Jeff, support Jeff, make Jeff do more stuff, because then we can support stuff like this. All right. You can find me most places on the internet as Nerd Numbers. I have been doing the Box Score Geek show regularly with Brian Foster. You can find that any place podcasts are found. We talk nerdy basketball. And Jeff, I'm getting into WNBA, and you have your friend Adam Todd Brown over at the You Don't Even Like This network to thank for that, because he made a WNBA fantasy league. If I'm going to do a fantasy league, I'm going to have to get the numbers, and I have that. And one more shout out to you two there. The Shohei Ohtani You Don't Even Like Sports season is out. Jeff is on that. You got to listen. There are even dogs involved, people. Dogs. Cute dogs. Yeah. So you got to check it out.
Let that dog in the podcast.
Jeff did. And he did it amazingly. So anyway, that's everything. Thank you so much. Again, patreon.com/JeffMay to keep supporting stuff like this. You want to get next month's early. I think you do, Jeff. I think we got to make it a hit just to confuse the hell out of Jeff. Next month's episode, I am looking forward to so much, but I'm going to be honest, it is definitely a not for the studio for me production.
This is your searching for Bobby Fischer episode of this year, of this season.
Actually, I was this did feel that to stay in nerd territory. I do have like the birthday episodes, which are the 4 Dre episodes. And then unfortunately, Jeff had to be a jerk and make a very SEO friendly offer for my birthday episode, which is also a delight. So again, patreon.com/JeffMay to find out what those are. I am so excited for August and September. Thank you, everyone.
We love you all. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next one, and we'll see you on the next Jeff Has Cool Friends as well. Bye.
Bye.